Hello, everybody. Welcome back to another episode of D3 Yappers. We might be D3 runners, but we're D1 Yappers at heart. I'm here with my fabulous, handsome co-host, Noah Tobin.
And we're here with Feet Duncan. That's it. There's no. I'm just kidding. The queen of the castle, the queen of D3, the queen of
the castle.
So yeah, let's just get right into it. So we have a cool episode for you. We're going to talk about the Houston Half Marathon and new sponsors and indoor mile Yaps, and also we're going to get into training updates and what we did this past weekend and the lovely gear updates and stuff and all that jazz.
All that jazz that we usually just yap about. So we went up to Tiffin last week to run what was hopefully going to be a spicy mile. It did not go to plan for either of us, really. We threw down some solid times. You ran a PR, personal best.
I ran another second PR, which is, it's good. I ran it the way I didn't want to run it. So my goal was to go under 420, and I went 422. The previous week I went 423. The previous week I went 213 through the first 800, then negative split 210. This past week I went 209 through 800 and then came back in 213. So the differences between the two races, last week it was a workout. I think there was less pressure. This week, not really a miler, but we swung for the fences and we swung a little too hard at first, and part of that was just the way that Tiffin set up the race. There was 3 heats. 2 heats of the guys' heat was the first 2 were 20 people each, and then my heat was 5. And there was one guy that was pacing us for 4 flat because there was a guy who was trying to get a Division II standard. So my race was basically how I went down there pacing for 4 flat, and I went out the first 200 in 31, and I was falling off the back of the group, and I'm like, great, we're gonna go out in 62. We're gonna be on 204 pace, which would be 408, which that would be great.
Massive PR,
new school record. Probably would have qualified me. No, definitely would have qualified me for nationals in the mile. But I'm not really a miler, so was just chasing that sub 420, and it took me out a little hotter than I expected. Came through 1,000 meters in 237 ish, which then at that point I was like, all right, my leg, I went lactic way too early. I think that was the problem. We talked about this a little bit. We kind of agreed that I'm more of a negative splitter when it comes to the shorter races.
Which is funny because the longer distances you just go out and hurt early and hang on better than anybody else.
I'm more let's just put money in the bank when it comes to longer distance races, which is I feel like I don't know. You go you risk that way more often in the shorter races of going lactic way sooner than you too, and there's less time to make up for that. So I think that's why I thrive better when it's a longer race. If I go lactic too early, back off a little bit and come back strong.
But I also think in cross country, you are just really good at breaking people early on, whereas in track, and don't take this the wrong way, you kind of admit you're not a miler, the leg speed to do that isn't quite there in the mile, so it's much harder to build a gap on those guys and put that money in the bank early on. But I'm really proud of watching that race because you put yourself in it early, and what else are you supposed to do when you're in a race with only 4 other guys and they're all on another team and they all definitely want to beat you? You got to put yourself in it.
It was terrible in the sense of they were pacing for 4 flat, and I'm not trying to knock people here, but I don't understand why we did that, because we were pacing for 4 flat and the pacer drops back, and then the guy that was supposed to run 4 flat doesn't run under 410. So it goes 412, and then the second guy goes 418, and then I go 422. And it's funny because I was put in at 418, and I was last in the heat, and the second slowest guy was at 410. Everybody else was in the 4.0s. So I guess I was just confused on why the race honestly went the way it did and why we tried to do that. Like, why didn't we just try to pace for 4:10? Even that would have helped. Because if they went out in 2:05, I probably would have went out in 2:10 at least or 2:08. Yeah, I'm saying that's faster, but how we went about it in the first lap could have made the complete difference for the whole race going forward. But moving on, face race.
Kind of similar to yours.
Yeah, very similar, but
yeah,
Chicago.
We had the D2 Natty Champ. Shout out Ines Macadam. She's the Natty Champ in the 800 for Division 2. She was going to pace. Plan was to pace through at 74s. We were a bit quick. I came through like the first 200 in third place, and I was gapped by Ines and her sister Greta.
I thought you were cooked.
Yeah, I kind of thought I was cooked too, not going to lie. The mile for me is all about just building up and maintaining momentum. And my internal dialogue during the mile is always just, like, hang on. And I was like off the back by probably like 10 meters. But I still came through 200 in like 33. So, yeah, it hurt early, but still ended up running like 4:57. So 200-meter flat track, we'll take it. It probably converts to like right around my PR. I just really one of these days want to run a true like solid mile PR that was faster than what I ran my senior year of high school and faster than what I ran my freshman year of college. And it's frustrating because I'm just going to come out here and say it. I feel like I could run under 450 with the strength and fitness I have built up, but
I think you're fit enough. You just don't. We just don't. Our training is just not built around that. Like, it's also not that we're not trying to be milers, so I get the frustration, but it's kind of like, I don't know. I was talking to Simon about this other day on the run. Like, he's like, I'm gonna leave him to college. He already can't come back for indoor, so he's like that 8. I think his record is 8:17, but that's on a 200 flat, so you'd have to run like 8:11.
Yeah. Yeah, we talked about this yesterday.
So
like,
he's kind of just essentially talking about. He's like, I feel like I should have ran like 8:08 or 8:11. He's like, I feel like I was fit enough to run that as well.
Yeah.
He's like, I just didn't do it. And he's like, that's the sad thing. I was like, I'll leave. But the thing is, he's like, but I know that was the type of runner I was. And so like for me, I'm like, I know I can go under 4:18 in the mile. Like I know I can. Like I'm fit enough to do it.
Yes.
It's just doing it.
Yeah,
it's just being set up, the scenarios, like
right.
Not running it on like a tight and old indoor track. Going to a nice facility, having multiple guys in it that's pacing. Like if everybody was pacing for sub 4:18,
you'd just be with that pack and ride. Yeah,
so it's one of those things in racing that you just kind of have to. It is what it is. I mean, tonight it's the same kind of way. Like I'm not going like for. Listeners who don't know, we have Wittenberg tonight, the 3,000, and my PR is 8:29. Haven't ran that in 2 years because of injury last year, and I was coming back indoors. It was my first season back in injury, and it's just interesting because it's like the goal is like as close as 8:20 or under 8:20, but once again, like my mile goal was 4:20. We were paced for 4 flat, 20-second difference. My goal is 8:20 today, if not faster, if I can hang on. And we're being paced for 8:10. So it's like, it's better. It's better. And it's longer. So it's like, it's even better that it's not 20 seconds difference. But in those kind of races, it's hard to find a rhythm when everybody's taking you out. And you kind of have to like gauge, like, where am I supposed to be in my race? Like it's so different from cross country because in cross country it's like there's no pace.
Right. It's all about
that's covering the train as fast as you can.
And that's kind of where my head is at with this mile that we ran at Tiffin too. It's like at the end of the day, a win's a win. I had kind of a rough lead up with like illness the week and a half beforehand. Kind of got over that this week finally. But even though the time wasn't exactly what I wanted, that was
casually when you won that mile. For everybody who's out there, she definitely gave herself bronchitis.
Oh yeah, I definitely trained through a sinus infection and just hacked up a lung for 3 or 4 days. But yeah, I'm a big believer that as long as you compete in track and your coach and you are good enough to just keep getting into those big races and keep kind of surviving and advancing to the next level of races, eventually the time will come with it. And like, I think we talked about this on the run yesterday. Like, Simon had asked me what my time goal was for today, and I really didn't have one. I was like, I'm just going to go kind of run hard from the gun. And this won't be released before I race. So that's my strategy for tonight, for anyone wondering. It's just to go hard from the gun and see what shakes out. But yeah, that's that's covering races moving forward. So we've got Steamer Showcase tonight, Spicy 3Ks, and then
we have a week off, and then we have Grand Valley, and then after that, it's pretty much postseason.
shiz. That's like fast,
Yeah,
but accurate. Yeah, that's a very good point because first or second week of March is nationals. So.
Oh yeah, I have to get a root canal.
Oh yeah, we were gonna talk about my illness, and then we were gonna talk about your root canal.
Yeah, the same week that you found out that you had bronchitis, I found out I needed a root canal. But it's actually been it's gotten, I feel like, better. There's a really rough patch of 3 days straight where it got to the point. It was the night of the national championship when the Buckeyes won.
Oh yeah,
go Bucks. OH for all you at home.
I
But so yeah, I was like trying to make it through that game, and my mouth was just throbbing, and I was like, all right, there's something wrong. So the next day I was able to get in luckily to go see the dentist, or 2 days later, whatever it was, and they were like, oh yeah, you got a root canal. They didn't tell me much information. They're like, hey, like, you got to schedule with endodontics, and I was like, oh sweet. So I called them, set it up, and we can't get me in until late March, which is like the same week of Raleigh Relays, which kind of sucks. I'm like, I don't want to have to deal with that. And then I come into my coach being like, dude, you're going to have to take a week off. So then I'm thinking, wow, like my 5th year.
Love Ron, but he doesn't know how the dentist works.
If he listens to this, we love you, Ron. But
he won't listen to this.
If he does, though, I want him to know. He made it sound like that he's had a root canal before. And for those who don't know, and I didn't know this till now, he has never had a root canal. He's only had teeth pulled in his wisdom tooth out.
But he made it sound like a horrible experience.
He's like talking about when he got his wisdom tooth out. He's like, you got to be careful when you come back. So you got to take a week off because you could get dry socket. And then I kept thinking about it. When you get a root canal, you don't get, unless they have to completely remove the tooth because it's that bad, which they don't. That's not the case. He's like, you have to take like a lot of time off because the scab, because there's a socket, an empty socket gets sewn up and it can bust open. And so when you do exercise, so they always tell you not to do exercise, and you can get something called dry socket, which is really, really bad and very, very painful and will prevent you from doing anything for days. And so he keeps putting this in my mind. He's like, you just need to call them and like ask what the restrictions are. So then I talked to Brad Hayes, Simon's father, and my mother. And my mother has had root canals enough to know what it's like. My mom has had a root canal after every child she had.
Oh my gosh, what?
So she had 3, and then she also had 1 more later in life. So she's had 4 root canals. So my mom knows. She didn't freak out when she heard I had to get a root canal. She just said, oh, that's kind of a bummer, but whatever. So I was wondering why she would do that. But, and part of me is like, well, my mom's not a runner anymore and stuff. So she's like, maybe she, like, the healing process for people who don't, do the type of exercise we do on a daily basis, isn't over, like, it's kind of overlooked. And so my main point kind of was, I ended up talking to Brad too at the grocery store the next day when I was freaking out. And he's like, I don't know what you're talking about. He's like, I was running like the next couple of days. And like in my head, I'm like, well, training's different. So I wonder if you took it slow or like, but then I called my dentist. They said they would just put a cap on it and they would fix the other tooth or whatever. And I would just be numb and be ready to go. So I called the dentist, and they basically told me what they were going to do. They're like, we're going to put a cap on it after you get the the procedure for the root canal, and then after that, you'll be good to go. Like, they're like, all you're going to have is really bad, not really bad, but like really bad numbing, like a lot of numbing. Like you just won't be able to feel like your right side of your cheek. So I'm like, okay, whatever. So then I was like, oh shoot, there's like 30 minutes till the other place closed. I was like, so I call them. They're like, well, let me go find out for you, like what's the recovery like for a root canal. And so then they got back to me and they're like, oh, it'll just be 24 hours.
I was like, okay, I'm a 5th-year grad student. Like, I have high-intensity volume training. Like, I explained it, like, to, like, pretty cutthroat. Like, I'm going to be moving. And basically she was like, no, like, seriously, like, we're going to drill down and, and we're going to fill it, and you're going to be fine after 24 hours, and you're going to be able to run and do everything you normally do in 24 hours. That's it. And I was like, are you sure? And she's like, I'm 100% positive. That's what the doctor said. And I was like, sweet. So then I go in with the biggest grin on my face to Ron, and I'm just like, you made me think my career was over. He made me think that I was going to be, like, I'd have to take a week off from running and have to, like, somehow cross-train lightly / try to keep this fitness going. Like, I was nervous. I was crashed. Yeah.
You were pacing back and forth. That's usually how I know things are bad, when you do the pacing.
Yeah, it was not a fun couple days, but now that we realized this, we're pretty excited that it does. Now I'm on like a waiting, like a list where, like, if somebody cancels, they can move it up, but we're still kind of iffy about it because it is the week of Raleigh, and that's kind of weird. But if everything's going according to plan, my goal is to schedule it like in the afternoon, run my double in the morning, or run my full mileage run in the morning, and then essentially I won't have to take a day off because I'll get my mileage in really early in the morning, get this procedure, wait 24 hours till that, and run after that. One after the 24 hours. So we're all good there. So that's my update on my root canal and stuff like that.
In our last bit of personal news, I am kind of scouting out options for a new watch because mine has fritzed out on me a multitude of times at this point. I want something cheap. I really just need something that does running that I can use on the bike if my bike computer dies, and that will connect to my heart rate monitor. In other words, I basically want a Forerunner 15, but man friend here says that that's probably not a great idea. But that leads us into gear. We've been talking a bit about the Pegasus Premium. Do you want to take the lead on that?
I would love to. So basically, I've been looking at this shoe because it's kind of been like a cool, like, little. It's a cool shoe. It's cool looking, and it's like, is that really a running shoe? And they're like, Nike is like coming up with a whole like Pegasus Premium line, or not premium line, but a whole Pegasus line. So now they have like the Pegasus family, they have the Vomero family, and they have the Invincible family and the React family.
But it's crazier because there's the typical Pegasus that's like you're like 37, 38, yada, 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 just the numbers. But then there's also like the Peg Turbo, the Peg Plus, and now the Peg Premium.
The Peg Turbo is the Peg Plus. They just wanted to rebrand it. But on the bottom it says Turbo. It's the same shoe.
Either way,
it looks the same.
It looks like a bowling shoe with that stripe down the middle.
It's a really cool shoe, and shush. But the Nike Pegasus Premium is my current obsession. I don't really think it's Faith's because she's not a big Nike girl, but it weighs 12.2 ounces, and it's a 10 millimeter drop, and it costs $210. I did not know that
for
part.
For a daily trainer, $210. But with that, you get that full-length Air Zoom unit, revolutionary.
Which is really cool, which I didn't know you could run with that unit in it. But I'm really curious how it feels because it's also it's like a layered cake.
Yes.
It straight up is like, it's a layered daily trainer instead of like a plated trainer. It's like it's a full like foamy player. It's like they have the Zoom X foam that's on the top, and then they have the Air Zoom unit in it, and then on the bottom is the React foam. And I don't know, I would love to get my hands on one to try it out personally, but I have no clue if I would love it or hate it.
I'd imagine it's a pretty unique ride. The Air Zoom unit, full length, probably adds a bit of weight to it. 12.2 ounces for a men's size 10, 9.3 for a women's 7.5. So definitely on the heavier side, but I would imagine with that and the Zoom X foam, which is familiar to all those Vaporfly lovers out there, I would imagine it would have to be pretty springy. I also don't know where I'd fit this in my rotation as a daily trainer, though. Like maybe long run shoe?
That's what I was thinking.
Speaking of long runs, let's talk about the Houston Half Marathon.
You're so enthusiastic. It's kind of funny because Faith's dad, Bob Duncan, shout out Bob Duncan, was there, but he wasn't able to really watch anything, which was very sad. We were hoping we'd get like a video of him with like Connor Mance in the background being like, "What's up?" But we didn't get that, sadly. But Connor Mance was the first American. He placed second, which is very controversial. I think me and Bob Duncan both personally think that he won, but he runs 59:17 for 13.1 miles, breaking Ryan Hall's American record from 2007, which was 59:43. So he breaks it by over 20 seconds. And people will argue like Ryan Hall's record was before super shoes. Yes, so it was before the plated years. But I will say this. From what I heard from Bob Duncan and from the actual like results and stuff, it was very, very windy.
It sounded like horrible conditions that I would not want to run in, especially fast.
Which, when you're talking about wind and those type of conditions, it really affects the longer the. We've talked about this. Like the longer the effort, the more those factors are going to play in it. Like the heat, the cold. Like your dad was touching about this. What did he say about the cold?
What, like when it's under like 40 degrees, it starts to be a performance detriment instead of like a benefactor.
Like after like 30 minutes outside, like in that cold, your performance actually statistically does go down, like from a physiological standpoint.
The other thing I will say is, well, first off, I guess like every runner's got their adversity story. Ryan Hall, the week before he set his American record at this distance, and it was on the same course too, same event, just 2007. He was like in a car accident and was very rattled by it, but still was able to pull it off. Connor Mance had kind of a negative experience leading up as well. He had a quad tear last year, a lot of people know, and he was having some similar quad pain again in his lead up. So he was doing a lot of cross training going into the race just the few weeks prior. And I just wonder how that cold would have affected him from a muscular standpoint. And if you're already worried about a muscular injury, like you definitely want the warmth and the blood flow there. So that was definitely not in his favor, but he still came away with a really dominant win over that last American record.
Yeah, another shout out is his training partner, Clayton Young. He went 60.52.
Just over an hour.
Yeah, so just a little bit over an hour. He went under that 61 mark. And then Faith's guy, and a guy that I'm growing. I follow him on socials. He's pretty cool. But he runs 61:01, so like right almost under 61 minutes, and he got 15th place. But I didn't know this, but he's run 70 minutes for half marathon off the bike. So, I mean, he's just a cool story. He challenged Cooper Tier in cross country earlier this fall, and like he's just a guy who just goes out and just does it. Like he doesn't do the training that other people does, but he does the training that works for him, and he's freaking legit. So, moving on, unless she wants to pick up with this, but here's the women's side of things.
Yeah, Wayne Kaladi. She broke her own American record, actually. She ran 106.09. I believe her old record was 106.20-something. Yeah, that sounds about right. We'll have to validate that. But she was second place overall. It was another close finish, not as close as that of Connor Mance in the victor, but 106.05 was the winning time. Other notable finishes, Natasha Rogers, Puma athlete, ran 108.35 for fifth place. Also, we want to talk about some relatively newly minted pros. Emily Venters, she's a really kind of fun, inspiring transfer story that I've read about. She was another two-time transfer, ended her time at the University of Utah. But she and Taylor Rowe, who's also on Puma Elite, running for Puma, both ran 108.48 for 6th and 7th place, respectively. So really cool to see how both of them did. Emily Venters, I also know, this might lead us into kind of our next topic perfectly. She was running for the Union Athletics Club, which was sponsored by Nike up until just recently. It was about a month ago they announced that they would no longer be sponsored by Nike, but it would be a bunch of individual athletes basically still coached by Pete Julian. So I don't know if Nike dropped their funding or if that was a choice just by the athletes specifically to do that there, but really interesting. Similar outlook with Adidas, actually. So Tinman Elite still lists Adidas as a primary partner and sponsor of their team on their website and on their Instagrams. But, we keep seeing athletes changing that. Like Sam Parsons put out an Instagram post last week saying that after years he was actually looking to re-sign, but his contract ended with Adidas.
And then I showed Faith this earlier in the week. I was kind of freaking out. I was like, Drew Hunter just posted that he's signing a contract with ASICS. And I was like, one, that's freaking awesome because of Clayton Young and watching his YouTube videos and watching how he trains and the shoes he uses and being a huge Nova Blast fan. Love the Nova Blast, and so does Faith.
We were also just talking about the new ASICS Magic Speed today and how that fits into their rotation with like the Metaspeed Sky versus Edge. Fun morning coffee convos.
No, I agree. I just think it's really cool that he's signed with ASICS. I think it's cool for ASICS to be getting that kind of light. I mean, Drew Hunter is a very famous guy that, we talked about him being very similar to Hobbs Kessler, about, that American, the kind of like LeBron James move to professional running. Like they didn't go to college. They just went straight to the pros. And, Drew Hunter's in his distance era right now. He used to be a 1,500 guy, and now he, debuts in the 10K last year and like goes that route. And now he's all in, and now he has a new sponsor for the shoes he uses. And honestly, love Adidas, but I think it's a better sponsor. I love the ASICS. I think what they're doing right now and what they have coming in and signing people like Drew Hunter and who knows who else they'll sign. But there's other new signings as well.
Brooks has really kind of come in as the hero on the scene lately, I feel like, with the signings for 2025. We talked in our last episode, or 2 episodes ago, about the Hoka dropping a lot of their athletes and possibly making a lot of money for NIL deals. Yeah, so the whole Northern Arizona Elite team is basically being cut in half, and that team is still sponsored by Hoka. Interestingly enough, they did just sign Morgan Pearson, who we mentioned, but Brooks picked up Alafine Tulamuk, who was dropped by Hoka. She was on the NAS Elite team. She was also the Olympic trials champion in 2020, but she just signed a deal with Brooks. Emily Infeld, who she's shared a bit of her experience with Nike, some good, some bad. But she just revealed that she signed with Brooks as well, and then Brooks also extended their contract with Josh Kerr to 2035, saying that they wanted him to become a future ambassador for them. So really, yeah, it's funny. I was listening to an episode of the Coffee Club podcast with some of the On boys like Morgan McDonald, Oliver Hoare, and they were talking. They were like, Brooks always seems like the good guys, and Josh Kerr seems like he just needs to be a Nike guy, which it's kind of funny. But the other interesting one, Molly Seidel, she's Olympic bronze medalist, and her contract with Puma is up, so it'll be interesting to see what she does. But I don't know. I could see her being a Brooks girly. Lastly, in the news, just a few fun things. Oh, Shelby Houlihan, Burrito Gate, as Noah called it a few weeks ago. She returns to racing this month, so that's wild.
Excited to see that. Excited to see how that plays out.
Yeah, it'll be a ton of fun. Lots of fun training videos with her on YouTube. And Jenny Simpson, who, again, just making me put my foot in my mouth after, our first episode where I was like, she's not a marathoner. And then she ran a marathon on all continents, so that was crazy. And now she's running in all 50 states. She and her husband have basically an RV, a camper van, and they're going to every state and doing a race in every state, pretty much back to back. So she just did her first ultra race. There's just a bunch of road races she's got lined up, trail runs. So really, really cool.
I think we should move on to the shout outs. So this week, I feel like I should have shouted him out earlier. It's funny because he just sent me something about Fetty Wap. Anyways, so probably one of my best friends, or is one of my best friends, not probably, but so this guy is Simon Hayes. We've talked about him a lot, but just a shout out to him. Ran a lot of runs with him this week in comparative of what I've been running with him. Because of him being not on the team technically, we don't really cross paths a lot except from our grad school classes and me working for his dad. So he comes in and out, and I make him breakfast. Anyways, we went on our shakeout this morning, and y'all will see the vlog that I put out. So you'll see. And he's also taking inspiration from us trying to do more content with videos He's going to try and get some of his YouTube stuff out more. So check out Simon Hayes. We'll link him in the bio and in the description and give you some cool content from him. But shout out to him, and let's go chase some 3K PRs tonight with him. So who's your shout out, Faith?
Okay, I thought really hard about this and was really, really struggling. I think, first off, collectively, we need to shout out the man in the pod from last week, Mitchell Durbin, who
100%.
who just ran insane.
He just ran insane, and he just followed me back on Strava finally, so pretty hyped about that. Dude's freaking cool.
Explain what he did.
The Chipotle segment.
Yes.
There's apparently this segment in front of Chipotle, right? It's in front of Chipotle, or like
Boston.
two
It's
in
like
Boston.
Chipotle segment.
And basically, if you are the local legend,
From January 1st to January 30th, they wanted to see who had like the local legend status.
and whoever gets it gets a free, gets 1 year, 1 year of free Chipotle, correct?
Yes, like a bowl or a burrito, like an entree for a
Remember,
year.
this is Boston. Like, this is like a pretty populated area. The people will probably run on this path every day.
So he was running it like a lot in January, which he had kind of touched on, like, if my Strava looks weird, it's whatever. But basically, he revealed like 2 days ago that he was going to go and run it like basically all night long, like January 31st until like February 1st to get this segment. But not only was he doing that, here's why I loved this challenge and how he took it. He put out basically an open invite on this Instagram video that got pretty big to have people come and run with him. So he's getting the local running community involved, which is awesome, running with a bunch of different people, supporting him, supporting each other. But then he's not keeping the Chipotle for himself. He said his plan was to get these lifestyle bowls and give them out to the people in need or the people who like couldn't afford the food, which is just... Shout out to you for just being a great guy and doing that for such a good
I'm not gonna
cause.
lie, for me, when I first was listening to it, I was like, oh, dude, for free Chipotle for a year, I'd be doing that. And then he said that, and it made me think back to being a good person. And I was like, we should do that when we have the opportunities to do that. And that's what we're taught when we go to church and stuff like that. You should do that. But that's awesome. I can't, it takes a lot. We always say, we hope when we're in the positions of doing stuff like that we make the decision to be that person. So huge shout out to him for that.
He also ran for over 6 hours straight. It was 40-something miles.
It was 46 miles in 6 hours. I just remember waking up and I saw it and I screenshotted it, instantly sent it to Faith, and she said, "What is this?" And I was like, my first thought was, how did his watch not die?
That's actually really
6
good
hours?
point. Dude, he needs whatever watch he uses. He needs
It's a Garmin. So I tell you need to get a Garmin.
Maybe that's the watch I need, because my watch yesterday literally said I started my run from a random building in the middle of campus, and I definitely didn't. And it had a different path on the same out and back that we did.
We did an out and back, the same out, the same back, the same turns and everything, and the two paths were off, and that's how I knew it. Your thing was bugging. But I'm pretty sure he has the Forerunner 245 music, which
I'm
is
4 years old at this point that I've used it. So
which that's the same watch that I used until Tyler, my old roommate, hooked his pinky in my we were I don't know why we were being dumb dudes and we're wrestling one day, and all of a sudden his finger got caught in my watch, and it just busted the watch band off of the hinges of the watch itself. So because I was originally going to wait till I was done with collegiate running to buy a new watch, because it was going to be my marathon watch, so now I have this nice, wonderful, beautiful watch that is my marathon watch a little earlier. That's weird. So my watch scenario happened earlier than I wanted to. My new car thing, because I got in a wreck. Both similar scenarios, but less traumatic. Anyways.
God's just prepping you. You're about to be an adult. Be ready. But anyway, my Strava shout out. Again, I thought about this. We wanted to talk about Mitchell. I just want to say thank you to everybody who joined the Strava Club after our last episode where we released it. We've got about 20 members at this point.
Which is wild, because it's a club we created, so it's not how there's the OAC, Ohio Athletic Conference Club, that's everybody, you have 10 teams with alumnus that also go to those teams, and so it's of course there's going to be a lot of people to do that. But this is Faith and Noah podcast. Like, you know what I mean? Like, it's kind of crazy that we got a good following, and shout out to Amalia as well. Like they've helped us a lot, and it's cool that we have a friendship with them now. I think that's pretty awesome.
Yeah. So, I guess speaking of Amalia, my personal news, Heartbreak Running Company, we're on the Love Squad, so got to shout them out. Very excited for that journey, and if you guys want some Heartbreak Running content, give them a follow. Very excited for that. Very excited for racing tonight. Do you have any final words for the pod?
I have something for Heartbreak. If you're sending Faith stuff, I think she wears a men's 9.5. So for shoes, just putting that out there. What was the one thing you wanted me to say? What'd you ask?
Do you have any final words for the pod?
Words of wisdom. Me and Simon looked back a year ago like we do with our Strava premiums, because, that's how we roll. And I looked back to last year, to my notes and stuff. Had a really rough start to the year last year. But a friend of mine who runs for Wright State, and he'll be there tonight, Patrick Statzer, I'll shout him out as well and put his link in the bio. But he commented on my race last year, which I got dead last in, and ran like barely under 9 minutes in the 3K. He put in there, progress is greater than, or what was it?
I said process over product, which I feel like is kind of the same thing. We even talked about that with Keegan. Shout out Keegan on the pod too this week. Keegan Kidd running. He's an 800 guy, freshman on the team this year, running well. He's learning a lot, and we literally just had that conversation with him. He's like, I feel like the intensity is like lower than it normally would be for like my high school training for the 800, but I'm able to do a lot more. And he's like, so over time, I feel like that's going to help. And I'm like, yeah, because you're not going to be as at risk of injury if you're not going quite as intense all the time.
But basically, I looked it up. It was progress is greater than perfection. And so that was really something I needed to hear at that time, and that was my mantra through the last year. And so thinking back to the mile this past week and what we're trying to do today, and, things aren't perfect, but, what ways can we strive to be better, and what things will help us be better, in the future. And so just shout out to him, and people just got to keep working hard and do what you can day in, day out. That's all you can ask for. Your daily best is the best you can do that day. That's all I really got.
Yeah, I'm right there with you. So thank you, everybody, for listening to another episode of D3 Yappers. We will catch you on the flip.